Well, we've heard for the yes case. What about the no case? As we await that decision from the High Court at 2:15 p.m. today, joining me now live is the Liberal MP Kevin Andrews, who is someone who was standing up in this debate for marriage remaining between a man and a woman. Do you have any tip, though, first on what the High Court will decide today?
No, I don't, Sam. I've seen the summaries of the arguments in the media that have been put to the High Court, and we'll just have to wait the outcome at 2:15 this afternoon.
Let's say the High Court does find that this is not legal and the plebiscite cannot proceed, despite the fact there's $5 million worth of ballot papers that are, ready to go. What does the Liberal Party need to do next?
Well, our position is quite clear, and it was reaffirmed just a few weeks ago, and that is that the Australian people should have a say about this. My experience out in the electorate is that people have come to believe that they want a say and should have a say, and we should simply say to the Parliament, we will keep trying to give the Australian people a say, because there's such a momentous change. If we do change the law, then it should be changed with the consent of all Australians, and it probably won't have the same legitimacy if all Australians feel like they've missed out on having their say.
So you think that if a Parliament was to take a vote to legalise same-sex marriage, that would be vulnerable to future parliaments overturning it?
Not only that, I think more importantly, if such a major cultural change occurs as this, then that cultural change needs the ownership of the Australian people. And because of what's happened over the last few weeks and few months, Australians, I believe, have come to the understanding that they're going to have a say about this and want to have a say about it. And I think we should find a way to give them that say.
So if the majority of the view in the party room was strongly in favour of a plebiscite, do you think that the ground would shift if the High Court struck it down? Do you think that there'd be support in the party room to just say, all right, we've tried everything, let's just have a vote of Parliament to do it?
No, because this came up to the party room just a few weeks ago, and the overwhelming view of the party room was that we should be putting this to the Australian people. We committed to do that, and we should maintain that commitment. I mean, there's been many times in the past when governments of the day haven't been able to get legislation through the Parliament. I can remember going back a decade or so ago as Industrial Relations Minister when we tried, I think, 44 times to get some unfair dismissal laws through the Senate. Eventually we prevailed, but we just kept trying because that's what we believed.
So did Malcolm Turnbull agree to a plebiscite as a blood price for the leadership, that the condition of him becoming the Prime Minister was to stay the course on the policy of a plebiscite?
Well, this was our policy. I mean, he was voted in by the party room, but this was a policy, and it's a policy which I believe the overwhelming number of my colleagues believe we should maintain, and that's to put it to the Australian people.
And if there was, as some have suggested, a cabinet revolt, if the High Court found this was illegal, and if there were people in cabinet who argued that we must now change the position, what do you think the reaction to the party room would be to that?
Look, I think the reaction of the party room will be the one that we reaffirmed a few weeks ago. That is, we've promised the Australian people have an expectation now that they will have a say, and we'll just have to find a way to give them that say.
And do you think, though, that it would be tenable for the Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, to announce a change in the policy on a plebiscite before the next election?
Look, I don't think he's going to do that. I think the view of the party room was quite strong. It was in a sense a compromise to say if we can't get a proper plebiscite, then we'll have a postal vote, but it's still saying the Australian people should have the say.
Okay. Now, we haven't had much of a chance today to talk about what your concern is in relation to marriage equality. You're talking about unintended consequences or other consequences perhaps we hadn't thought of. What are they?
Well, the consequences are in terms of freedom of speech, and we've seen that played out just in the last week or so. I mean, people who have respectfully argued in an advertisement, for example, that they're against changing the law, they've been attacked on Twitter. We've had a medical practitioner have a Get Up campaign against her to try and seek her deregistration. I mean, this is outrageous, really.
Gays have been bashed and killed, though, for being homosexuals, haven't they?
Look, any violence and any instance where people are being attacked for simply having their view is totally out of place. And this has been happening against people who simply want to maintain the current definition of marriage. Now, if that's happening now in terms of trying to shut down people's expression, their freedom of speech, well, what will it be like if the law is actually changed? And that's one thing I'm concerned about.
Okay.
I'm secondly concerned about religious freedom as well. There's very little protection of religious freedom in Australia. I'm chairing an inquiry at the present time through the Human Rights Subcommittee, and we've had expert evidence from constitutional and other legal experts, and the summary of their evidence is that there's very little protection of religious freedom in Australia. Now, that's a consequence of these changes, which, you know, the current legislation, the current bill of Senator Smith simply doesn't go to.
All right, something to tease out more on another day, but thanks a lot for your time today, Kevin Andrews.
My pleasure, Sam.